Hello and welcome. My name is Paige Burgess, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator at the Health Museum here in Houston, Texas. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our Menninger Health Series webinar. Today's discussion, titled When Does Gaming and Screen Time Become a Problem?, covers gaming, social media, and its impact on adolescents and their behavior, as well as age-appropriate strategies for parents to effectively reduce screen time. We are pleased to be joined by Delana Burris, who has more than 10 years of professional experience and currently serves as a behavioral addiction specialist for both inpatient and outpatient programs. After earning a bachelor's degree in psychology from New Mexico State University, she earned a master's degree in psychology from the University of Phoenix and a master's degree in addictions counseling from Grand Canyon University. Delana is a member of the Texas Association for Addiction Professionals and frequently writes for the blog Mind Matters from Menninger. She has special expertise in gaming addiction and advanced skills in cognitive and dialectical behavioral therapy. Please join me in welcoming Delana Burris.
All right, thank you so much, Paige. I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. All right. And one thing that I did ask from the monitor is if people have questions as we go, that would be very helpful because sometimes when we get to the end of a presentation, people forget their questions. So if you do have questions, put it in the chat and we'll read it as we go. Or if your question's too long for the chat, please just put in the chat, I have a question, and we can go to you and you can give me your question. So I'm here to talk a little bit about gaming. So gaming is something that I have gotten a lot of personal experience with. I am a single mommy of 6 children, ages now 25 to 11. And gaming has been something that they enjoy quite a bit. And it's been a challenge for me, both personally and professionally, to learn skills around to monitor and to make sure that the behavior is beneficial and not something that becomes problematic. So quite often here I get a lot of outpatient referrals, and it's usually parents, and parents are asking me, you know what, my kid is gaming so much. How can I modify this behavior? Is this behavior even problematic because all their friends do it? Tell me, when does gaming or screen time, because that can include cell phone use, become a problem? And so I put this presentation together to kind of talk about that. So I just want to go over a little bit of some of the recent trends. So Frontier.com did this really cool survey of parents. About 1,000 parents responded. And these were parents who endorsed allowing their children to game. So these are parents not who are completely opposed to gaming, but parents who've allowed their kids to game. So pre-pandemic, so going back all the way to 2019, seems so long ago, they pretty much approximated their children's gaming habits to be about 2.2 hours daily. Now with the beginning of the epidemic, gaming time actually increased. We think about it, there was a lot of isolation, not so much of the regular socialization for our children, and a lot of time at home. And so they approximated their gaming time to go up to about 3.1 hours daily. And I think this is probably a very conservative number. However, the survey also showed that a lot of the parents tried to implement controls around their children's gaming habits. So about half said, you know what, they only allow to game after they've completed certain chores around the house. About half even used online parental controls. And a little more than a quarter said, you know what, we only allow gaming on the weekends. Another survey, which I found to be very interesting, was done very recently. So after the pandemic began, so by April 2020, an advocacy group, Parents Together. Now this group is about 2.5 million parents in the United States. They found that about 82% of parents who responded to the survey were actually worried about their kids' screen time. So when we think about screen time, it's not just gaming on the Xbox or the PS5, but this is also including YouTube and cell phone use and specific app use. About 43% of the parents reported excessive use of screens has caused family conflict. So we think about family conflict quite often. That is parents trying to get their kids to get off their phones or get off of their gaming devices. And about 39% of parents identified an increase in screen time as negatively impacting their children's mental health. And this is usually when I see parents, when I see their children referred to me, parents have thought, you know what, I've noticed a change in my kids' mental health. Maybe they're more anxious. Maybe they're feeling a little bit more depressed, especially with the impact of social media that we're seeing, where children are beginning to compare themselves to really expectations that can't be reached. And so the increase of depression, increase of anxiety has been the result. So what's helpful for me is to allow the parents to be curious when we have our sessions. Really encouraging the parents to at least hear what their child's view is on gaming or screen time. So if you ask the average adolescent, you know what, why do you game so much? They usually come up with, hey, this is how I socialize. The majority of my friends are online. Even people that they've never met, they'll refer to as their online friends because this is their piece of socialization. If you think back a couple of generations ago, even one generation ago, there was a lot more outside time. The world seemed to be a little safer. There wasn't so much concern over kids being outside. With the implement of the internet, with a lot of the news reports that we get online, news reports that we get to the television, we hear a lot of the negative things that are happening in our society. And so it does breed fear and also a lot of concern. So we do keep our kids inside more. With parents, though, they view gaming as more of entertainment. And so not so much the socialization piece, but more of, hey, you're just chilling in your room and you're just having fun. And this is just entertainment solely. Kids view gaming as skill building. If you think about some of the games that the kids are really into, they actually meet up with their friends, they form a team, and they collaborate together to accomplish a goal. Other skill building is the dexterity that's required to really actively game. For them, not just the mental skill building, but also the hand and eye coordination skill building. Whereas parents really have this view of gaming is just escaping, it's going into a virtual reality, it's almost a numbing, a fantasy piece, and there's really not a whole lot that parents see as positive. For kids, they also view gaming as, hey, this is relaxation. This is time for me to just disengage after a long day at school. It's time for my brain to kind of turn off a little bit and relax. Whereas parents often refer to gaming as a waste of time. So if you'll see a lot of the responses that I get whenever I interview parents and kids in the area of, hey, give me your aspect about your thoughts around gaming. The kids usually have very pro-social, positive responses, whereas parents seem to have a negative view towards gaming in general. And then kids, adolescents usually see gaming as fun, it's leisure time. This is time for them to really relax. And what we would kind of think about is our playtime. whereas parents tend to see gaming as a reward. If you remember in one of the earlier surveys, they really wanted kids to get done with their homework or their responsibilities before they engaged in any gaming. So factors that really influence the way that kids conceptualize gaming and parents conceptualize gaming come down to a few really important points. So if you think about it, our children, adolescents today, are the first generation that's been exposed to internet access in the home since birth. So the invention of the internet was January the 1st, 1983. So it wasn't that long ago. But this is the first generation that actually has grown up with internet completely in the house. Another important factor is the invention of the smartphone and of course the iPhone. So kids are walking around with a little mini computer. Smartphones are quite different than the flip phone that I had in college, and even the older phones that we had growing up. But the invention of a small device that makes gaming, that makes screen time so accessible and so fun, really influences the way that kids view screen time. The advancement of computer systems. I don't know if you can think back to the first computer you had in your home, but it was quite different than the laptop and iPad that we are used to having now. And then the accessibility of screen time. If you think about it, our kids are exposed to screen time at school. They're exposed to screen time at home. If you're waiting in line at the grocery store, most people pull out their phones. There's screen time there. Anytime a child feels bored, I've seen parents hand them a device. And so I think we were eating the other day at a restaurant, and every child at the table had a screen in front of them while the parents were able to enjoy their meal together. So I find that the way that our society in general has viewed screen time has really influenced the way kids view screen time as well. Now, parents' view is very much factored by a couple of things. One is our game systems growing up were not very realistic. If you think back on the Ataris that we had, the Nintendos, they were not complex. And so the way that gaming systems are set up now are really set up to draw the child, draw the adolescent into this fantasy world that is very alluring, very complex, and it's very much more realistic than what we had growing up. And then the other thing that really impacts is the majority of parents grew up in a pre-smartphone, pre-home internet, at least from birth generation. And so we have a generation of kids that grew up quite differently than the parents. Another couple of things that I find very interesting when I work with parents is really the gender of their child. So the majority of research right now that I have access to is specific to male and female, and it does not include non-binary. So the Pew Research Center, which is, it's a nonpartisan fact tank organization, they actually found a discrepancy, if you will, in the way parents view gaming, specifically because due to the gender. So parents of girls are more likely to say that games do not have any effect on their children than parents of boys. And so there's probably several different factors that play into that. However, parents of boys seem to have more of a negative response, or at least a negative view of gaming. Specifically, the Pew Research Center in this survey found that games have negatively impacted their sons. So about 20%, about 18% of male gamers say that playing video games have negatively impacted their son in different areas. So whether it be aggression, whether it be anxiety or depression, a good 1 in 5 of the parents have been able to say, you know what, I've seen a change in my son. Whereas for parents of female gamers, it's actually down to 7%. And this goes across all age gaps. So between the age of 12 and 14, 21% of parents say that there's been a negative influence on their male child, compared to only about 6% of girls in the same age bracket. And then about 16% of parents of boys 15 to 17 have said there's a negative influence, whereas only 6% in that same age cohort. So what are some of the benefits of gaming? Most of the time, parents come into my office and they have a list of all the negative things that are going on when their child games. So I really encourage parents to take a step back, because screen time is not going anywhere, and nor do we really want it to go anywhere, because really this is the way of the future. But how can we maybe open up our minds and see some of the positive influences of gaming? And that can often allow us to have a conversation that's more constructive with our kids. So thinking about the benefits of gaming, the first one is socialization. So a lot of times adolescents will actually engage with their friends online. So growing up, I'd go over to my friend's house or they'd come over to ours. Well, that's not so much the case any longer. So kids usually meet up with their friends online. They actually work together and collaborate as a team to achieve a goal. So if you've ever watched kids play games, you can see that they join up with their friends in a game, and they'll usually work together to accomplish their goal. This really cultivates online intelligence, a lot of technical knowledge. When we were getting ready for the webinar, there was some technical difficulties. And I couldn't help but think, you know what, if one of my kids was here, they probably could help us put together this Zoom session with ease. Their technological knowledge is quite high, and that is definitely a benefit that they've gotten from gaming. Physical dexterity. So it takes quite a bit of hand and eye coordination to engage successfully in a lot of the games. And I can see this definitely carrying over into sports. Even in martial arts, there's the connection between the brain and the physical extremities, and it can become very sharpened through gaming. Relaxation. Thinking about gaming, it's relatively a safe downtime for kids. Now, this is going to involve some parent monitoring, and we'll talk about that in a bit, but we know where our kids are. Motivation. So screen time can really become a carrot to cultivate motivation. So when I think about the earlier surveys we went over at the very beginning, you know what? I've used gaming definitely to encourage my kids to complete their homework, or to complete their chores around the house. And usually it's a pretty strong motivator. And then we can also use gaming as a tool for correction or modifying behavior. And what's so helpful about this is the consequence of not being able to game. For kids, it's tangible, it's relatable. It's something that they do value, and it's something that they know could be taken away if they have a behavior that needs to be modified. So a question that parents usually come up to me and ask is gaming designed to be addictive? And so the long and short answer is probably. So video game designers, they very much want to profit. They're looking for ways to get more people to play their game. And so I've heard of gaming companies hiring psychologists to figure out ways to increase the addictive nature of their games. They're looking to make a profit. And so video games are very much designed to challenge players enough to keep them to return to playing the game, but not so hard that they're going to give up. I actually work in the area of gambling addiction, and gaming very much mirrors gambling addiction. So what the idea is to keep success just out of reach. So they don't make the levels too hard to get through. However, they make it hard enough to where the players will return and stay engaged. So another question I get is gaming an addictive drug? Well, there are dopamine levels that are associated in that reward center of the brain um, that actually are released when people do enjoy gaming. So gaming increases dopamine levels in the brain, as is a lot of behaviors that we do enjoy, such as sex and food and shopping and gambling. Gaming does not increase those dopamine levels as quickly as and as intensely as some of the drugs like methamphetamine or cocaine or even nicotine. However, it can still become problematic. So when we think about adolescence, it's important to understand that adolescent behavior is really driven by rewards much more than adults. So when adolescents do play rewarding games, the connections in the brain that influence the return to the game through the production of dopamine. So it is important to understand that kids will enjoy gaming, and their behavior is very much driven by the reward that they experience from the behavior. So with that kind of very brief neuroscience knowledge in mind, I want to talk a little bit about the red flags. So this is probably the reason why a lot of you decided that this would be a webinar worth attending. So when do I know that this behavior that my child really enjoys has become problematic? So what I look for is preoccupation. So what does your child talk about? Is the only thing that they talk about is when the next new cool game comes out or when they can get home and game with their friends? Has this become a center of their attention? So if there's preoccupation, that's definitely what I would consider a red flag. When you take away gaming, let's say there's a consequence and you tell your child, okay, we're going to take away gaming because maybe you got a bad grade on this exam because you weren't studying. So we're going to take away gaming for a while. Well, does your child express sadness, anxiety, or irritability? That's above just being upset over losing their game system. Is it something that's elevated? Is it something that continues for a long period of time? We consider this withdrawal type symptoms. Is there a tolerance that's developed? So maybe pre-pandemic, your child was gaming 2 hours a day. And then during pandemic, it went up to 3. And then post-pandemic or in our new world, has it continued to escalate? So one thing that we do think about is there a tolerance that's been building? Is there a need to spend more and more time gaming? Then is there an inability to reduce playing? So is there unsuccessful times where your child has been able to like walk away from their device? Has your child given up activities or lost interest in previously enjoyed activities? So I see this quite common in adolescents, maybe 15, 16, when they're playing sports, and maybe they're not so much involved in playing the sports that they once loved. Are they giving up those activities that they once enjoyed to just kind of sit back and enjoy gaming? Do they continue to game despite having problems? So if you think back in one of the earlier surveys, it talked about family conflict. So despite family conflict, despite having arguments over the time that they're spending gaming, do they continue to go back to gaming? Do they deceive family members about the time that they're gaming? So when everyone goes to bed, do they wait till you go to sleep to get back online and game? So that deception piece can be something that is quite worrisome. Does the use of gaming relieve negative moods? So maybe your child had a rough day and the only coping skill that they have is to get on and game. Or are they able to actually talk through their problems? Or are they able to cope with their issues related to negative moods such as anxiety or depression in a way that's healthy? And then is there a risk or having jeopardized or lost a job or relationship due to gaming. So kids not necessarily not really working, but I think more in the area of relationships. So are they risking relationships that they've developed because they'd rather be in front of the computer and game versus cultivate that relationship? Another concern that parents often bring up is the co-occurring addictive behaviors that can come along with gaming. Now, this is specific to the adolescent populations. I'm not thinking about the 5, 6, and 7-year-old that enjoys playing Minecraft. I'm thinking more along the line of the 15, 16, 17-year-old who has begun to really game and enjoy meeting up with their friends online and gaming late into the evenings. At this time in their life, adolescents are really going through a phase where there's a lot of experimentation. And so naturally, adolescents are pushing limits and really learning how to live in society. So when I think about experimentation, I think about that drive for reward. So quite often, this is where adolescents not only are gaming to have fun and to meet up with their friends, but this is usually when kids are exposed to substances. And so we're seeing a co-occurrence of gaming and cannabis use now. And so this actually can become quite problematic, quite difficult to treat as well, because these two addictive behaviors, the use of substances and the use of gaming, tend to not simply co-occur, but they actually begin to reinforce each other. And so whenever we do work with, or whenever I do work with a client who is gaming and using substances, this becomes something that's not only difficult to treat, but finding the motivation behind it is quite hard because adolescents are really seeking reward. And then another issue that quite often comes up is the use of pornography. So whenever you are in front of a device and you're gaming, the accessibility to pornography is quite high. As parents, we know that it's really important to monitor our child's cell phone use because pornography is free, it's accessible. It's available online. And so when we think about gaming habits, it's important to consider what else are they doing in front of the screen. A really cool evaluation that I've directed parents whenever they come to me and say, hey, I don't know if my kid's gaming too much. Can you help me out? Is the Center for Internet and Technology Addiction has a very brief online parental assessment tool. And you can go to virtual-addiction.com, and there is a link for a child technology test. And so it's a self-report instrument, and it's helpful to be able to use this tool to just see, you know what, is my child gaming too much? Is this becoming problematic? So what are some helpful tips around just at least beginning the conversation with our kids about their gaming? So one thing I really encourage parents to do, besides really being curious about how their children enjoy gaming and to kind of open up maybe their mind a little bit to see the benefits of gaming, but also understand that integrating screen time into a schedule is important. Screen time, like I said before, is not going anywhere. However, we can use screen time in a very healthy and balanced approach. I encourage parents to be very consistent. So it's difficult, especially in the summertime. Your kids are home, maybe you're at work, and how do I encourage my kids to not spend all day gaming? Well, we have to be consistent around our boundaries. We have to be consistent around what we tell our kids. It's a little difficult when you're the parent at work. As a single parent, I completely understand. However, there are ways to approach this conversation. One thing that I really encourage my kids is to think about how they feel when they game all day. When you game all day, do you feel like you've accomplished anything? And quite often kids will tell you, you know what, no, I kind of feel blah. I feel like I just, didn't get much done. Um, Children really rely on parents to set rules, regulations, and guidelines. Now, that doesn't mean they like it, but they rely on us to put in place rules and regulations because at this point in their life, they're very reward driven. And so they really rely upon us to understand the need for reward, yes, in a healthy and balanced manner. One thing I do tell my parents are to set limits on the Wi-Fi availability. So this includes flipping off the Wi-Fi at night. My Wi-Fi in my house goes off at 11 o'clock during the week and midnight on the weekends. Yes, they can still get a hold of their cell phone and use their cell phone, but I've created at least a barrier to their gaming habits at night. And gaming is much more fun in front of the television than it is on their devices. Another one is limit cell phone use at night. So when my kids were younger, I would have them put their cell phones in the kitchen and put it on the charging table. I didn't use it as something that was a punishment. It was more of just what we do. Okay, our cell phone needs to take a nap. It needs to go to sleep too. We're going to leave it here charging, and our room is for relaxation and our bed is for sleep. And then the other thing is parents should really model healthy gaming or screen time behavior. So our kids watch what we do, and what we do will speak very much louder than what we say. And so when you're in line at the grocery store, do you pull out your phone and do you scroll through social media? One of the highest growing populations of gamers is actually men above the age of 40. And if you think about that, that's interesting because your kids not only will see you gaming, if that becomes a habit for you, but then also ask you, hey, well, you don't have a problem gaming all the time, then what's wrong with me gaming? Another helpful tip that I don't have listed here is really integrating into the habits whenever you are allowing your children to game is to look at the rating symbols. So the ratings there are for us to use as a helpful tool. It's not necessarily to regulate what we allow our children, because of course it's up to the parents as far as what they should allow their kids to play. But there's a really good rating system now for games, from early childhood to everyone 10 and older. There's a teen, there's a mature, there's even an adults only rating. And so it might be helpful to also just maybe do some education around what games your kids are playing and what's the rating system there. This slide's a little bit busy, but I'm going to give you some clinical recommendations. So when I do see kids and adolescents and parents who are concerned about gaming habits, the first thing I tell them is consistent limiting of electronic use, screen time and activity, and engagement in other face-to-face activities. So that's super difficult in the time of COVID, right? We had to really limit our social interactions. But it's important to understand that gaming should be limited. It's not something that we do all day. It's something that we may do whenever we want to relax or as a reward. However, it's not going to be something that takes the majority of our downtime. Keep track of the time spent gaming. So I've had my adolescents keep a track of, you know what, the time that they begin gaming and the time that they end. I've had them look on their cell phone. There's a really cool piece to your cell phone that shows how often you are in different apps. Because a lot of times we completely will disregard maybe how much time we spend, or maybe we underestimate. And if we have a factual list of how much time we're actually spending gaming, it's helpful. And then I tell my clients to take a digital holiday. take a tech break or a digital detox. So this is some designated time where we don't game. This may be a time where, you know what, today is Tuesday. So we're not going to have any gaming on Tuesday. Instead, we're going to have family time. We're going to catch up on our chores, get our room cleaned up, and this will be our designated day that we don't game. Increase interest separate from gaming. So, you know, a lot of our face-to-face socialization has decreased over the last couple of years. However, there are other avenues to socialize that doesn't necessarily involve gaming, and be creative about it. Allow time to rebalance physical and emotional needs. So what I have found with adolescents is they're really hungry for knowledge. And if you are able to give them specific information about how important it is to get adequate sleep, how important it is to get regular exercise, and how important it is to have social interaction, usually adolescents are very open to hearing this. And then a very important element, which I think is difficult whenever we have parents who work, especially when our kids are home in the summertime, but it's really important to reintegrate or reintroduce benefits of spending time in nature. So when I do work with people who have issues related to gaming, I really try to have them experience rewards in a real-time living situation. So let's go outdoors. Let's play soccer. Let's take a hike. Let's take a walk with the dog. I've had kids put together gardens. The goal of this is to really teach your children to be present, to be mindful, and to enjoy real-time, real-life experiences with those rewards. All right. Just going to leave this time for questions or comments.
All right, thank you for that, Ms. Burris. We did get some email questions in that I can kind of ask you at this point. And then as you mentioned, if anyone has a question, feel free to raise your hand. I'll come to you there. And then I'll also be looking at the chat responses as well, just in case anyone had any questions. The first one is, from what I know about gaming, it caters to a remarkably diverse demographic. Are these statistics adversely affecting certain demographics more than others?
I think on this particular one, I would tell you that there is, am I able, did I close my screen okay, Paige? Okay. What I would tell you is this. There are demographics that are adversely affected, and the demographics usually are specific to young male adolescents. And so as we kind of went over at the surveys at the very beginning, it is actually impacting the young male adolescents. As far as race and cultural demographics, I haven't seen research in that particular area, but I have seen that it is adversely affecting males over females.
The other question is, in your opinion, is there enough emphasis on the duty of care in keeping players safe performed by gaming companies? They said that even now the news has a moment of Zen incorporated in their shows, and in other research, has there been an effort to incorporate a pause or a break in gaming sessions? And what do you feel could be a useful change? Can you speak to that as a parent or an expert?
Sure. So I guess, first of all, I'll speak to it as an expert. So I tell you the rating system is really kind of the go-to as far as the way that video game, I guess, people who create the video games really lean into as far as their duty of care. They're saying, look, we're putting together a rating system and it's really up to the parents. As a parent, I would tell you this, you know, it starts with the parent at home. And so this is where our responsibility as parents and to control what's going into our house the best we can, and to really know what our kids are doing.
Yeah. Okay, great. And then I had a more personal question. I mean, I know my brother was really into gaming as a teen, and now he doesn't even own like a gaming system, and he's in his mid 20s right now. Do any of your findings suggest like a climactic point of gaming and then an eventual burnout over time? Like maybe that climactic point being the teenage years and then kind of dying down later on?
Yeah, so the normal trend is this increase in adolescent, especially in this generation, because that's where, that's where the socialization is. In fact, one of my boys met one of his girlfriends on Xbox Live. So this is really where a lot of socialization happens, right? And then there's an increase, of course, whenever kids go to college. What we're finding out right now is there's a dramatic increase when kids go to college. And then after they get out of college, if they're set on a career, there's a dramatic decrease because the interest is very much associated with this drive to get their career going or this drive to kind of engage in real life activities. And there may be a die out as you mature a little bit, but then there's this dramatic increase, like I alluded to, in the 40s, where men are returning to gaming. I found it completely fascinating when I read that research. But it makes a lot of sense, right? They're not out at a bar, they're not hanging out with their friends, they're at home. And so they're there, and it kind of like checks the box of being at least physically present. However, that is becoming problematic as well.